Hello everyone, welcome to Lotcas. Today, I'll be covering Light of the Crest and Shield, Volume 0. Now this is going to be an ongoing series where I cover multiple chapters of Light of the Crest and Shield, Volume 0. So with that being said, um, I would like to remind everyone that all art is owned by its respective companies and artists, and let's get into it. Light of the Crest and Shield, Volume 0. Long ago lived a race of beings who in their evolution discovered ores and minerals stronger than steel and more coveted than gold. On a distant yet clouded world, it began to be known as the Hollow Stone. As they began to thrive, an ancient tribe begins using their advanced technology to colonize their world, mining the gorgeous chromatic metal for themselves, creating weapons of great power, with no other hope to combat the conquerors. They prayed to the gods for help, and to their surprise, they cured the mercy. They cured the mercy of the fates, as well as the rage of the all-knowing Orion, angered that they would belittle the power that is fate by calling on him. In a great rage, he created a storm with the strength to kill a god, striking them all and laying waste to the entire world, and allowing the ancient tribe to conquer without convention halting their assault. They proceeded to colonize the world under the a prophecy that if they did not respect the previous inhabitants of the world, a horrid fate would fall upon them, and a great enemy would befall not only their world, but the entire mortal realm for centuries to come. Yet in their rejoicing victory, they disregarded their bodies, not even bestowing them with the proper burial. Instead, building over whatever corpses they did not discard. And just as the fate predicted, they rose again with scarred bodies that allowed them to heal and breath like no other, allowing them to breathe on other worlds with a burgundy, glowing, red, piercing stare. Their superhuman physique began bursting through the structures that were built atop their bodies, as their pure chromatic lightning, void of emotion, shot from the ground, destroying their civilization and killing the last of the ancient tribe bent on conquest and power. After they began adapting the tribe, technology, and culture, they began conquering world after world with their atmokinesis begin or abilities, often not having to ever step foot on any world surface to fight any world unlucky enough to be in their path, causing them to rise through the ranks, allowing their clan to achieve the rank of Marquis, known for their ability to conquer and conjure weapons made of lightning, becoming known as the Danes of Phoenix. Chapter 1. Our story begins with Emmanuel, already growing tired after over 4 millennia. Currently fighting hordes of assassins, he inhales before breathing out and breaking one's arm, throwing him to the ground and breaking another's leg, rewiring his knee. He quickly turns to block another's immediate assault, fending off kicks and punches with his forearms and shins before punching him in the throat and sending a roundhouse to his ribs, knocking him back, then back kick to the man behind him in one swift motion before dropping his foot, lunging up toward a flying knee, bracing his face tucked behind both forearms, knocking the assassin off balance, sending him hurtling back towards the ground. Emmanuel raises his leg up in midair, dropping it, suddenly axe-kicking the now stunned man with a clear shot to the face. As he turns around to see the previous man standing from the back kick, attempting to catch his breath. With two more assassins standing behind him, Emmanuel's eyes glow blue as he rushes the assassin, whose eyes now harbor an ominous red. Both begin throwing and fending off a barrage of attacks as the other men begin to join, whacking and cutting him with blades and steel pipes, with the man before equipping divine knuckle dusters of his own, before returning to the fray, exchanging blow after blow, with Emmanuel standing his ground, giving the fight all he has. Suddenly, the man with his lackey grabbing Emmanuel's arm, then stabbing him in the kidney 7 times. Emmanuel calls out in pain before twisting his bent down arm back into place, elbowing the knife man in the bridge of his nose, then attempting to punch the other, missing, hitting the assassins with the steel pipe, taking the opportunity. The man's eyes glow more as smoke leaves his mouth and wings protrude from his back, and his skin begins to harden, the cells growing into scales. Not before long the man stood a wyvern, commanding the power the now comes with his new form, but with his hand and side out of order, as well as the huge threat the met now befalls him. He has been left no other choice. He summons storms to his hand. As the storm settles in, he summons his celestial treasure, the artifact given to every arch-celestial at birth, and his just so happens to be the orb of creation, with the orb manifesting itself into the sword Sanzo Masamune. His eyes begins to turn an ominous deep blue as he immediately strikes his adversaries with violet streaks of lightning, now emanating from his palms to the tips of his fingers, and out once more, piercing the large creature as it exhales pain and misery. He stands striking him with quickly He quickly, in one swift motion, slices the steel pipe into small rings, slicing his arm off, then cutting an E upon the next assassin's chest. He winks, with the lightning rendering his divine knuckle dusters useless, before doubling down by slicing his throat. When the dust finally settled, Emmanuel stands among his victims, with the knifeman being the only one to retain his conscious mind as he holds his broken nose lying defeated at the Arch-Celestial's feet. Suddenly, out of the shadows, steps hundreds of thousands of men. Emmanuel looks up, sheathing his sword. So, this is how it's gonna be. I was hoping to be a little bit nicer. Well, he says, still maintaining his ominous deep blue gaze, spreading his wings. Unleash! He cries, as his eyes begin glowing increasingly brighter. So does his body. Becomes a defeat white at the center of what is now an explosion of divine kinetic energy being discharged from his body. As the blast erupts, it envelops the assassins, leaving only dust in its wake, destroying everyone except the knifeman. Think, Tithina, he says in relief, as he begins walking off before looking back. Tell Wolf that this is it. This was it. He says, his glowing in his eyes subsiding, as the rain begins falling on the corpses around them. He missed his last chance to see me. Now he has no one to blame but himself. But this is it for me. I'm done. And this puny little hit squad was the icing on the cake. I'm done. And this puny little hit squad was like the icing on the proverbial cake. I've decided. I hope one day you find what you're looking for, even if it's at the cost of my siblings. That you might miss your ambition, your ambitious pride, yet I doubt that to be so. After all, they're my siblings. So I don't think they'll go willingly. Maybe love, or even lust, might ease your burdens, but promise me, old friend, that you will find your love to instill your ambition, foster in a legacy through children, become happy, find your happiness, and let only that be the pinnacle of your ambition. Make sure he promises. He says, walking off, the assassin laying on the ground, left terrified, struggling to remember the entire message. Emmanuel's ship docks into a tavern, posting flags of importance and a crest, as if it was a royal attendant. When guards step out, enter all sporting uniforms with a concerned expression, immediately scanning the room. Interrogating all who inhabit the establishment, they begin to tear the tavern apart piece by piece, and going as far as to even remove each age mark in every slab of wood. Recently ridiculous. Those who come to enjoy a nice ale, beating the drunks and looting, for it seemed they were growing restless. The longer they stayed, yet could not find what they were looking for. And as they took their leave, a hollow tube pulled in. A man steps off with a melancholy expression. The driver thanks him for he has generously overpaid his toll, having even paid the driver himself personally for a job well done, as he, as if he resented his own fortune. He then paid for the entire tavern's reparations as well as buying every assortment of ale the tender could muster, to give going to going as far as to invite the entire town for free ale. Later that evening, after all had retired, the man stayed drinking. It is not that he is trying to run from his life at the bottom of a glass. It is that he is hoping the glass itself will save him from indeed he does harbor resentment for his wealth. Indeed, he no longer wants his ale. So he buys and he buys, never taking a sip more, for the man can't any longer, for he knows his own limits, as well as that the poison rejects his celestial blood. He cannot be pushed no farther. He has already drank more than he has ever drank in his whole life. Drinking so he is reduced to only ordering drink after drink, and wasting said ale, for there is no one left to hand it off to, except for the only man there besides him. As he pans around the room looking for an scapegoat from the agony he feels, he stumbles, collapsing a couple inches from the corner. In the corner lied a figure cloaked in shadows. So long the figure could not be differentiated from the shadow. He looks up as the differentiation was impossible. He approaches this figure. He asks it with no hesitation, "Do you feel empathy? Do you know pain, not of the physical nature, but of the emotional, verbal, and financial pain?" The figure looks up and claims, "I do, for I have retired under the tavern floors for years now. For it has been so long that I am hardly noticed by the drunkards. All who knows of my presence are the regulars, for I have never had nor will ever have grossed anything." Just then the man starts to cry, for everyone understands his pain. So he vents to his figure concerning matters of his marriage, the source of his wealth, his mother's recruitment, his father's abuse and absence, his uncle's support, his aunt's death, his friend's abandonment. He vented about his every line of sweat that is ever trailed down his face, every drop of blood or tear he has ever shed, for on that night all of his emotions poured out. In this man cried a river so wide and yet so narrow that he could stretch around the world twice over. To this shadow, shrouded in mystery, he cries a river of pain. He pulled the pieces of his heart straight from his sleeve. Then, when his story finally concluded, the man decided to repay the shadow for listening. He decides that since the figure has no hope, that he will give him his crest and his wealth, solving both their problems in one fell swoop. All the figure needed to do was to unshroud himself from his mystery and pull back the shrouded cloak that he had been hiding under for years. Yet the figure could not do this, for the cloak he has hidden under his has become a part of him. Yet the man needs to trust him in order to be rid of his problems for good. As a immortal descendant of the first celestials, if he does not die or surrender, he will live his horrid life forever. There's no hope of escape, so in the man's intoxicated mind, this is the only way he can be free. So he orders the figure to unmask himself, pulling out his crest and revealing to him that he owns the tavern, as well as the world they reside in. Instantly realizing the mistake that he made, but the celestial proceeds regardlessly, saying, "If you don't come out in the next 5 seconds, I will go home to my seat at the Senate, and my first order will be to slay you and destroy this tavern and all that resides here. I will decimate this entire continent if I must, just to kill you. And this, my good sir, is not a threat, it is a promise. Just your face, for it is all I need to fully give you my trust, my love, my world, my wealth, my crest, and my life." So, with a faint look at the figure's true face, the woman in the shadows receives Emmanuel's crest, wealth, status, and world. "Madam, I thank you," the injured immortal says as he begins deteriorating into nothingness. Elsewhere in another sector, a 16 chapter 2. Elsewhere in another sector, a 16-year-old child named Vel Light lives on a world that is slowly being conquered by the tyrannical dictator and new ruler of the world, Oskir, or the Sunraiser, a being of great power. But now he is being woken up for his studies by his HAAIP, Holographic Auto Artificial Intelligence Program. "Vel Light, are you with me?" As the fire starts, Vel awakens from his chamber to respond. "Yes, you have me, Testris," he says as he steps from his obsidian chamber, swinging open, letting out a blowing wind of steam. "Good. Your mother has just set a course for her occupational home, and it is time for your studies." As Vel steps out, he sighs while also rolling his eyes. Then he looks up, calling out, "Very well, but I will not be having the salty pellets this morning," he says as a smirk slowly crawls across his left cheek. "Oh, stop. You love the salty pellets," Testris says. "No, I am required to consume them, nothing more," said Vel, with a stern look of disappointment. "And you of all people should know that." Testris pauses for a moment and then says, "Very well. Then what will it be on this beautiful Zaxel?" The black powder the black powder pellets with lava sauce and scrambled coal titch, Vel says as he sits on the floor in anticipation for his nourishment. The face on the monitor comes up, as well as on the cooking unit. I can now see you aren't in a bad mood after all, said Testris. Really? How can you tell? Vel stated softly and sarcastically. You bothered to use your manners, something I wish that you did more often, Testris said. His eyes widened in amazement and steam shot softly out of his neck. He then slammed his hands on the floor. Prepare my nourishments immediately. Enough of this banter, he said. Manners, said Testris. Fine, Titch, he said. Quinn, your nourishments will be with you shortly, she says. He snickered. Well, we'll make it expedient, he said, smirking again. Yes, Master Vel. A little while later, Vel is attending his studies when the Cinders come over, one by one until the whole group stands behind Vel.